Hey guys, going live again. My name is Bethany Noble. I am a Reiki master and trauma-informed mentor and transformational coach. Going to talk with you guys today about a couple of things that have been coming to me this week. I'm going to give some time for folks to join us on the live today. Been coming on live to kind of talk with folks just to kind of about some things that just come to me that I think are relatable to other people. I work with people on things that are maybe needing to be healed in their life. Maybe there's something traumatic that they've gone through. A lot of times people come to me because we have relatable backgrounds. But a lot of times I will come on here and talk about stuff that maybe I've experienced, or maybe not direct experience necessarily that I have, stories, but stuff that I have been called to speak about that I think might give some insight to other people, and that's always going to be my goal, will be to share information that I think will be meaningful to other people. So that's my goal here. So again, for anybody who isn't familiar with me, my name is Bethany Noble. Again, I'm a Reiki master and teacher. I'm a trauma-informed mentor, and I am a transformational coach. I work with people who are making shifts in their lives, with their health. Maybe they have a background in their health, and they are working through things, whether it's a spiritual change that they're making and they're transitioning through that, or they have some trauma and they're working on trying to manage and transition through that. I work with people on different levels, either one-on-one, and then I also have group programs that I work with people in group settings as well. So I wanted to talk today about something that has been coming to me all week, and it's something that has been impacting me in my life, not directly today necessarily, but I wanted to share this because it is, I think, a big part of everybody's life. And this past weekend, I attended my daughter's baccalaureate celebration, and it's a kind of a religious rite of passage for the graduating class for high school ceremonies. And in that, the minister or the clergyman that was there did a really awesome scripture reading, and he gave a sermon. And in part of that, he spoke to loneliness and the prevalence of loneliness in our community. And it really stuck with me when he was talking about that. And as he was speaking about that, and then after I left, and then this week, Spirit kind of continued to message me about this, and brought me 2 clients this week with messages about loneliness. And then also I had a couple of conversations with other people as well about the same thing. Hey guys, thanks for joining. It's really great to see you. If you are joining, if you can drop the hashtag live in the comments, I would appreciate that. And then if you're catching this, not live, but you're catching the replay, you can drop a hashtag replay. I would really appreciate that as well. So as he was talking about loneliness, it was striking some things with me, because I have experienced severe bouts of loneliness as an adult. And he was talking about how loneliness impacts 1 in 2 adults in America. And I came home and I started doing a little bit of research about this, and I learned that the World Health Organization isn't calling loneliness right now a global pandemic, right? But it is a global public health concern, because it has such a detriment and so many links to things like death, mental illness, and like different chronic diseases. So, there's definitely, Gen Zs and millennials are hardest hit right now when you think about like who is hit hardest with loneliness, and how what the spread in terms of demographic looks like. So I started thinking, well, what does that really look like? And I know for me personally, I'm a millennial, so where do I fit into that? And I'm looking at this from a perspective of, there's young adults that you think about, and those, typically hit the Gen Z-ish for us now. So those are like the maybe like 24 and younger-ish folks. And they're super isolated, I think, because of the social dynamics that we have going on. And then we have our elderly community, and they're also equally as isolated, because I think a lot of times that they've lost a spouse, right? Or there's health isolations that go on. You have single adults like me that I fall into that. My kids have primarily left the home. My work life had evolved so that I was also a remote worker. So, those remote workers also fall into that category where, they are really susceptible to loneliness as well, because there's very little interaction and engagement then with other personalities. I remember, when I was even in the corporate environment, things just kind of shifted. There was almost like less of a desire for people to be even on the screen seeing one another at some point. And that really impacted me in a very, very negative way. Just losing that amount of interaction with people and being able to visually put my eyes on people. You could still talk through the screen to people, but I couldn't see people. That really negatively impacted me as a remote worker. So, those kind of groups of people I think, fall into the range of categories, so to speak, of the people or groups of people in our millennial and beyond, Gen Z-ish groups that we think about when we're thinking, who are the loneliest of lonelies that are out there. I would also maybe, think, and I'm saying this off of personal experience too right now. For me personally, while I was very, very lonely at times, I did not present as being lonely. I presented as being very happy-go-lucky, very jovial, very like this right now, always, I think, very probably ready to do the most all the time. And my message about that, and I'll definitely be doing a live at some point about this. My message about that would be, those are those are the people you should also be checking on in life. It are the people who are always doing the most for you and are always the ones that are checking on you. So you should always be checking on those people too. But I digress. So the people that are kind of impacted the most, you should definitely be checking on those folks, and checking in on them frequently, because the isolation and that loneliness that can set in very quickly is hard to kind of peel yourself out of once it starts to set in. And especially if you're something like a remote worker, where your life and your work, your personal life and your work are kind of all intertwined. If you don't have someone or other things kind of keeping you involved and keeping you separate of that loneliness, it can get very it can overtake you. It really can. So why do we have so much? Like, why is it so prevalent? Like, why does it exist so much right now versus a decade ago or 2 decades ago? We have like so much more disconnect now than ever before, even though we seem to have so much more ability to connect now than we ever have before. So there's like this huge digital disconnect where I've been able to, obviously I can connect with all of you right now. Any of you that can dial in, you're able to, and anybody that can watch later, you're able to. But what kind of real engagement am I having with anybody, right? Like that is such a huge factor in loneliness, is like, where's my real engagement? Where's my social interaction coming from? Where do I truly get that involvement from someone? And we also develop then this thought of, well, then I can just kind of do it on my own. If I've already been doing it on my own, then why can't I just keep doing it on my own? And that kind of leads you into this further pit of kind of isolation, where you kind of are in this mode of, I've been doing it, so why shouldn't I just keep doing it that way? And I'm the one that knows how to do it best, and nobody else is going to do it right but me, kind of mentality. And that kind of individual mindset kind of starts to keep you in your own lane, which is good in some regard, right? To stay in your lane, we want to do that in some ways, but it limits you from then also having opportunities to engage with other people and to accept opportunities from engagement, because we start to develop things like fears of engagement. Also things like economic stressors of like financial stressors, or maybe I'm like super burdened with my schedule. Maybe I have 2 jobs, that I have to keep things afloat. I'm always there have been times, I know, in my life when there has been nothing but go, 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 go. And it has been everything that I could do just to get the basic needs met. And then at the end of the day, or really the end of the night, all I was left was just feeling like complete emptiness. And I can remember thinking, like, what is it that I'm missing? Like, what have I done that I should have done different, or what could I have done differently? And also thinking, I just don't even have time to think about this sometimes. And And I think that that's also partially because we over glorify independence in some ways. And in over glorifying independence, that increases loneliness, and it increases the real propensity to continue to do these things and to continue to have like the team around you, or like the social team around you, continue to kind of have like this hands-off approach from you of, well, she's already been doing it this way, you know, for the last 2 decades, so obviously she's fine. Well, that's not necessarily the case, right? Because you know, just because you've been doing it that way doesn't mean that's the way you should be always doing it. So yeah, I think we kind of get into these habits sometimes, and we don't know that we're doing these things the way that we're doing them just because we've been doing it that way. And then all of a sudden we realize, I feel really bad. And, you know, loneliness is very much like that. Loneliness, it creeps up on you. And then all of a sudden you're like, I feel really, really, really bad. And I can remember like being at that end of the day or end of the night mode, and sometimes thinking things like, oh, well, all I really need to do is now fix it with stuff. And that's kind of one of the things that happens too, is we try to fix things, you know, with stuff, and our cultural solution right now is so much like that, like just buy, fix it with, you know, more of whatever I can one up, you know, the next person or the other person with, or, you know, whatever I can get online, and that's gonna pacify me until the next thing comes up. And that's really all that's happening. And God, I hit that hard, you know, a few years ago when I was really spinning hard over some stuff, and that need to fill that loneliness space was out of control. So much so that, you know, buy, spin, was the solution that I thought was in place at that point. Because the other thing that I think that we lack in a reason that we have so much loneliness is because we have such a low, such a lack of emotional intelligence around loneliness. We don't talk about it. We don't share much about it. You know, again, I kind of go back to men also when I think about that kind of demographic being impacted. There's very little communicated there. That is, especially with the mental health community, men are impacted, and they just don't speak about the impact that they have. You know, when it comes to loneliness, just because you are, I want to make this point, just because you are in a relationship doesn't mean that you don't have loneliness. I can remember being in many situations when I was married, when I still felt very lonely. So, sorry, that just came to me that I needed to share that. Very important, I think, for people to keep that in mind. You know, when you think about 1 in 2 adults being impacted by loneliness, you cannot for a second think, oh, this is only impacting single people. That's not the case. So you keep that in mind, guys, when you're thinking about this. Anyway, real quick, while I'm thinking about it too, if you're catching this live, hashtag live in the comments if you can. Hashtag replay if you are catching the replay of this. So thank you guys so much for joining. We're talking today about loneliness, and the impact of loneliness, ways to mitigate loneliness. For any of you that aren't familiar with me, my name's Bethany Noble. I'm a Reiki master and teacher. I do transformational coaching one-on-one, and I also do group setting coaching for those that are working through trauma healing and spiritual journeys that you may be working on right now. If you are interested in working with me, you can find a link in the description, click on that, and set up some free time with me. So, I think if we can really, start talking more about these types of things and get a little vulnerable with ourselves, it's gonna really raise more awareness. If you have experience with this, or someone has and you want to share, drop some feedback in the comments. I'd love to hear it. So what can we do to minimize or mitigate loneliness? Like I said, the first thing is talking about it, bringing some awareness to it. When I was struggling the hardest with loneliness, the first thing that I was able to do was first just start talking to people about it. And I say that was not even the case. Like, it was like just even acknowledging that I was lonely felt really challenging, and just acknowledging it to myself felt very challenging. And being able to speak with somebody else about it also felt very challenging. But once I kind of broke that barrier and then identified that, okay, this is kind of what it needs to be in order for me to feel any relief, I started to kind of take some steps forward and just made myself vulnerable. I can remember, and this was part of a kind of larger journey for me also, but I remember, putting myself out there into larger kind of group settings. And that's also, one of the larger, I think initiatives when it comes to loneliness is finding community settings that you can put yourself into, and giving yourself that space to really be vulnerable in those settings. For me, it was really scary, very, very scary to be willing and then just take those steps to do it. I still struggle a lot with going into kind of those group settings like that, and a lot of that has to do more so with taking on a lot of energy when I go into big places, and just being in big crowds and stuff, but which I know probably sounds silly because I'm talking about loneliness, but sometimes being in large crowds for me gets very, very overwhelming very quickly also. So I think, finding like a community gathering, that's also kind of one of the reasons why I started the Facebook group that I did, because I also wasn't really finding a lot of places that resonated deeply with me. So if you aren't already part of my group, please feel free to join. I would love to have you. Gifted and Grounded, the Spiritual Alchemy Circle. Send me a request and we can get connected there too. So a couple of other ways that I think helped me, especially whenever I was really facing loneliness, I found mentoring. I found mentoring through a couple of different ways. I found some people that were kind of spiritually higher than me and I, was able to lean into some conversations with them and develop myself in that regard. So, I think finding some mentorship, kind of generational mentorship, if that's the right way to say it, some conversations that can help you to further develop yourself and your meaning. That's very very helpful in pulling you kind of out of that loneliness layer, onion layer. Also, coaching and therapy in general, right? Psychotherapy, transformational coaching. These two things are not the same, but both are equally effective and helpful in different ways. And healing when it comes to trauma, loneliness, these different things that are going on that we may be working through. So I think also being intentional about your technology is a major, major factor. When I was dealing with loneliness and was in some really deep isolation, I was way down in a rabbit hole on some social media sites and should not have been. So be careful about how much, you're letting yourself kind of get down in that social media rabbit hole yourself, and how much you're allowing yourself to be, on your screen time. Also, just as much as you can, get yourself engaged with and connected with nature, connected with the community. And I know it's one thing for me to say that, and then it's another thing for you to do that. Don't bite everything off, in one chunk. Find a small and manageable step at a time. And, if you're like me, a lot of times I like to get an idea and then try to do it all in one fell swoop. I get really excited about things and then I just try to do it all at once. And, when you're coming from a place of loneliness or you're coming out of a place of isolation, you can get really defeated very quickly if you try to take a big swing at something like that and then miss. So just give yourself some grace and be patient when you're coming out of a place of loneliness and isolation and you're ready to take some steps forward, because it can take a little bit of work to find the thing that's going to work for you or the things that are going to work for you. I would tell you, just remember that, loneliness can also be a portal to growth. And when you reflect in your loneliness, when you sit in your loneliness and you reflect in that time, you are able to really receive some real interesting and helpful information too. So, don't be defeated by all of the time that you may have alone, and know that everything is delivered to you with purpose and with meaning. I would say, kind of finally that, if you're working through loneliness and you are ready to try to maybe break free from some of the challenges that you might be having, that are maybe holding you back, and just limiting you, definitely I would love to talk with you. I have worked through a lot of limiting beliefs, a lot of limiting factors. There's just, there's a lot of things that come up in life that can make you feel like, you can't get around things, you can't get over things. And really the only way to do it is to get through it. You're not going to manage anything. You're just going to work through it. And loneliness is one of those things also. So if it's something that you'd like to talk about and you'd like to work through, click on the link in the description and set up some time with me. It's a free soul alchemy, a soul alignment session, and we can chat about that. I do one-on-one coaching and I do group sessions also. So I would love to talk to you. I hope that this has been meaningful for some of you. If there's something that you would like to hear me talk about in the future, drop that in the chats. If there is something that you can relate to in this, please drop that in the comments also. I would love to hear that feedback from you guys. All right. I hope you have a great rest of the day. I'm headed off to one of Kimber's last soccer games for high school, and it's a beautiful day here. So, all right, I love you guys very much. Have a great day. Bye.